The city's training academy reverberated with the sound of heavy boots against the concrete as Sarah Mitchell walked through the main gate for the first time. At 32, she wasn't exactly a newcomer to the world of firefighting, but in that particular place, surrounded by young faces and wary glances, she was definitely the novelty. The transfer to that station had been her choice, a necessary change after years working in extreme firefighting zones that few firefighters experience in an entire career. The academy's head, Captain Roberts, a middle-aged man with gray hair and a military bearing, had been briefed during the presentation. He simply pointed to the women's locker room and informed them that training would begin in 15 minutes. Sarah hadn't expected a warm welcome, but she also hadn't anticipated the icy atmosphere she encountered upon entering the main hall where the other cadets were already gathered. There were 12 in total, all men, all visibly younger than her. The tallest, a blonde, broad-shouldered young man named Derek, was the first to make a comment. His voice echoed through the space, clearly intended for everyone to hear. He jokingly asked if the newcomer hadn't gotten lost on her way to some yoga or Pilates class. Laughter followed the comment, some genuine, some nervous. Sarah remained impassive, adjusting the straps of her backpack as she walked to an empty bench in the corner of the room. She had faced this kind of reception before, in other situations, in other places. The difference was that in those previous contexts, she had needed to prove her worth quickly, sometimes in a matter of minutes, under conditions that tested not only physical skill, but also the ability to make decisions under extreme pressure. During the first week, the comments continued, always veiled enough not to be considered direct harassment, but clear in their intent to undermine and intimidate. Jake, another cadet with visible tattoos on his forearms, had a habit of bumping into her during running exercises. Marcus, the oldest in the group after her, frequently questioned aloud whether women really had the strength necessary to carry heavy equipment or rescue victims from burning buildings. Captain Roberts observed everything with a neutral expression, never interfering directly. Sarah suspected it was part of some unofficial test, a way to assess how she would handle social pressure before even facing the real pressures of the job. She maintained her routine, executed each exercise with technical precision, and avoided unnecessary confrontation. The change began during a simulation training exercise in the third week. The academy had an elaborate structure that mimicked a 3-story building, with compartments that could be filled with artificial smoke and movable obstacles that simulated real fire conditions. The team had been divided into groups of 4 to execute a basic search and rescue operation. Sarah was placed in a group with Derek, Jake, and another cadet named Tommy. The dynamic was predictable. Derek automatically assumed leadership, distributing tasks without consulting anyone. He assigned Sarah to stay in the rear, responsible only for holding the hose while the others advanced. It was a position that minimized her participation and maximized theirs. The exercise began with dense smoke filling the simulated corridors, zero visibility, intense heat from the artificial sources, and the weight of the full equipment made every movement deliberate and exhausting. Derek led with Tommy close behind, Jake in the middle, and Sarah bringing up the rear as instructed. They advanced through the first floor without incident, finding 2 mannequins representing victims and moving them to the designated area. On the second floor, the situation had changed. One of the movable walls had been unexpectedly repositioned, creating a maze that didn't match the mental map Derek had formed during the briefing. He hesitated, his voice sounding tense through the radio as he tried to decide which direction to take. Jake suggested going back and trying another route, but that would consume precious time in a real situation. It was then that Sarah spoke for the first time during the exercise. Her voice was calm, almost casual, but there was a quality to it that made everyone stop. She described exactly where they were, identified the change in structure based on small details she had observed, and outlined an alternative route that would get them to their goal faster. Derek questioned how she could be sure, but Tommy was already moving in the indicated direction, trusting the authoritative tone she had demonstrated. They found the 2 remaining victims exactly where Sarah had predicted. The extraction was quick and efficient, and when they emerged from the structure, Captain Roberts was waiting with a stopwatch in hand. Their time had been the best of the day, significantly better than the other groups. Derek was speechless. Jake looked confused, and Tommy watched Sarah with an expression of renewed curiosity. In the locker room, after the workout, the conversations were more subdued. Someone asked where Sarah had learned to navigate compromised structures with such precision. She answered vaguely, mentioning previous experience but not elaborate. The full truth was something she wasn't yet ready to share, and she also questioned whether it was necessary. But the dynamic had begun to change. During dinner that night in the academy cafeteria, Tommy sat at the table where Sarah was alone. He didn't ask permission, simply pulled up a chair and began to eat. After a few minutes of silence, he mentioned that his older brother had served in a specialized firefighting unit, the kind that was deployed to extreme situations requiring military training beyond traditional firefighting skills. Sarah continued eating, letting Tommy fill the silence. He described how his brother had worked in conflict zones, putting out fires caused by bombings, rescuing civilians from unstable structures while fighting was still raging nearby. The kind of work that demanded not only courage and technical skill, but also the tactical ability to assess multiple threats simultaneously. When Tommy finally asked the direct question, inquiring whether Sarah had worked on something similar, she met his eyes and simply nodded. She offered no details, didn't brag, didn't make a dramatic move. She merely confirmed what he had already begun to suspect. Tommy finished his meal in respectful silence, and as he stood to leave, he thanked her for sharing that information. The news spread quickly, but in a curious way. There was no dramatic confrontation or public acknowledgement. Instead, Sarah began to notice subtle changes. Derek stopped making sarcastic comments. Jake stopped intentionally bumping into her. Marcus, who had been particularly vocal about his doubts regarding women's abilities, began to observe her during exercises with a thoughtful expression instead of a disdainful one. Captain Roberts summoned Sarah to his office a week after the incident during the simulation. The space was Spartan, with walls decorated only with certificates and photographs of different graduating classes. He gestured for her to sit down and spent the next few minutes silently reviewing her record. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a different quality, respect mixed with genuine curiosity. Roberts mentioned having received information about Sarah's past, though he didn't go into specific details. He acknowledged that he had intentionally allowed the other cadets to test her limits, observing how she would react. Intimidation and social pressure were, in his opinion, legitimate ways to assess character and resilience. Sarah neither agreed nor disagreed, simply waiting for him to get to the main point of the conversation. The captain explained that he was planning a more challenging final exercise for the class, something that would require not only individual skills, but also the ability to work under effective leadership. He wanted Sarah to take command of one of the teams during this exercise, not as a favor or compensation for the difficult week, but because she clearly possessed leadership experience in high-pressure situations that the others were still developing. Sarah accepted without hesitation. Roberts provided details about the planned scenario. A complex simulation involving multiple floors, victims hidden in non-obvious locations, and structural complications that would require rapid adaptation of strategy. Each team would have 20 minutes to complete all objectives. Failure to rescue all victims or significant violations of safety protocol would result in disqualification. The next 2 weeks were intense. Sarah trained with her assigned team, which included Derek, Marcus, and a quieter cadet named Ryan. Initially, there was veiled resistance to her leadership. Derek especially had difficulty accepting orders from someone he had tried to intimidate weeks before. But Sarah didn't allow egos or wounded pride to interfere with the training. She conducted detailed analysis sessions, breaking down each aspect of the simulation into manageable components. She discussed not only what to do, but why to do it a certain way. When Derek suggested a different approach, she listened, evaluated the merit of the suggestion, and incorporated useful elements into the overall plan. When Marcus questioned a decision, she patiently explained her reasoning, demonstrating how her experience informed those choices. Gradually, resistance waned. Ryan, who had remained neutral during the first few weeks, proved to be extremely competent in navigation and communication, skills that Sarah quickly incorporated into key positions in the plan. Marcus, despite his earlier opinions, demonstrated impressive physical strength and a willingness to work hard, qualities that Sarah publicly acknowledged and strategically utilized. Derek was the most difficult. His ego had been built around being the best physically, the fastest, the strongest. Accepting that effective leadership required more than physical attributes was a difficult mental adjustment. Sarah addressed this directly during a particularly frustrating training session. She pulled him aside and spoke frankly about the realities of the job they had chosen. She described situations where brute force didn't matter, where split-second decisions had to be made with incomplete information, where trusting her team was the difference between success and tragedy. She didn't share graphic details of her past experiences, but she made it clear that she had been in situations where hesitation cost lives and arrogance was a luxury no one could afford. Derek listened in silence, and something in his expression changed. It wasn't an instant transformation, but a gradual acceptance that perhaps there was more to learn than he had initially recognized. In the following days, he began asking genuine questions instead of veiled challenges. He wanted to understand how she assessed risks, how she prioritized goals when everything seemed equally urgent, how she remained calm when others panicked. The day of the final exercise arrived with a tense atmosphere at the academy. All the teams were prepared, each with its own strategies and internal dynamics. Developed over the weeks, the simulation structure had been extensively modified, becoming even more complex than in previous sessions. Captain Roberts and other instructors would be observing from strategic points, evaluating not only efficiency but also teamwork and adherence to safety protocols. Sarah's team entered the structure fully equipped and mentally prepared after weeks of training. The smoke was denser than in previous exercises, the temperature higher, and the obstacles more challenging. Sarah maintained constant radio communication, checking the positions of each member as they navigated the first floor. Ryan quickly identified the first victim, using systematic search techniques they had practiced repeatedly. Marcus efficiently executed the transport, while Derek kept the escape route clear. Sarah coordinated everything, her calm voice providing direction without micromanaging every move. Trained. On the second floor, they encountered an unforeseen complication. One of the structural walls had been deliberately weak, creating a real risk of collapse if too much weight was applied to the adjacent area. Sarah identified the problem immediately through subtle signs that years of experience had taught her to recognize. She redirected the team, choosing a longer but significantly safer route. Derek initially questioned the decision, pointing out that they were wasting valuable time. Sarah quickly explained the structural risk, and to her credit, Derek accepted her assessment without further argument. They adjusted their approach, and Ryan located 2 victims on the new route. The rescue was executed flawlessly, with Marcus and Derek working in sync to move the victims through the tight space. The third floor presented the final challenge. The last victim was located in an area where the heat had increased significantly, simulating conditions close to the flashover point. Time was running out, and there was a temptation to rush the operation. Sarah forced the team to maintain a controlled pace, reminding them that accidents happened when people sacrificed safety for speed. Ryan reached the victim first, but encountered a problem. The mannequin was trapped under heavy debris that would require the combined strength of multiple people to remove. Sarah made a quick decision, instructing Marcus and Derek to move forward, while she and Ryan secured the escape route. The rescue operation was completed in less than 3 minutes, but it felt much longer due to the intense heat and dense smoke. When they emerged from the structure, with all the victims accounted for, the timer showed 19 minutes and 43 seconds. They had completed all objectives with 17 seconds to spare, but more importantly, they had done so without a single violation of safety protocol. Captain Roberts watched with an expression that could have been approval, though. He was too good at maintaining professional composure to let much show. In the locker room afterward, the atmosphere was unlike any previous moment in training. There was a sense of shared accomplishment, a mutual recognition that they had functioned as a cohesive unit under pressure. Derek was the first to speak, thanking Sarah for pushing them to train so intensely. Marcus agreed, admitting that his initial doubts had stemmed from ignorance and prejudice, not rational assessment. Ryan, always the most observant, commented that he had learned more about effective teamwork in the last few than in all his previous time at the academy. He attributed this not only to Sarah's technical skills, but to how she had built trust and respect through consistent actions rather than empty words or displays of ego. Graduation took place 2 weeks later. All cadets who successfully completed the program received their station assignments. Sarah was assigned to a specialized unit that dealt with higher-risk situations, exactly the type of work her previous experience had prepared her for. Derek, Marcus, Tommy, Ryan, and the others were distributed among various regular stations throughout the city. During the ceremony, Captain Roberts gave a speech about the importance of keeping an open mind and recognizing that experience and skill come in many forms. He didn't mention Sarah specifically, but several cadets understood the message. Intimidation and prejudice were luxuries that couldn't exist in a profession where mutual trust was literally a matter of life or death. Sarah left the academy that day with a sense of accomplishment. She had faced challenges different from those of her past, but in some ways equally important, proving worth through consistent action, building respect through demonstrated competence, and transforming skeptics into allies through genuine leadership were skills that transcended any specific environment. Years later, when Derek was promoted to captain of his own station, he kept a photograph of that graduating class on his desk. When young firefighters asked about it, he would tell the story of how he had almost missed an opportunity to learn from one of the best by allowing pride and prejudice to cloud his judgment. It was a constant reminder that true strength came not only from muscles or courage, but from the humility to recognize when others knew more and the wisdom to learn from them. Sarah spent her first few months at her new station, observing the dynamics established among the team members. At Station 47 was known for handling the city's most complex and dangerous situations, and its reputation attracted experienced firefighters seeking challenges beyond routine calls. The unit's captain, a veteran named James Cordero, had over 20 years of service and scars that told stories he rarely verbalized. The team consisted of 8 permanent firefighters, including Sarah. There was Michael, a technical rescue specialist who had worked in mountain operations before joining the urban department. Lisa, the only other woman on the team, was an advanced paramedic with emergency medicine training who often made the difference between life and death in the critical first minutes after a rescue. The others were veterans with varied specialties ranging from hazardous materials handling to aquatic operations. In the early days, Sarah noticed that no one tried to intimidate her or question her presence. There was an implicit recognition that anyone assigned to that specific station had undergone rigorous evaluation and possessed exceptional qualifications. The atmosphere was professional, almost clinical in its efficiency. Each member knew their role, performed their duties with precision, and trusted that others would do the same. The first few weeks were relatively calm, at least by that station's standards. There was a warehouse fire that required prolonged firefighting operation, a traffic accident with multiple victims trapped in wrecked vehicles, and a few routine calls that could have been handled by any station in the city. Sarah performed her duties competently, but there was no situation that truly tested the specialized skills she had developed in her previous career. That changed on a rainy Tuesday in October. The alarm sounded at 3 in the morning, jolting everyone from their sleep with the urgency characteristic of true emergency. The dispatcher's voice, through the communication system, described a developing situation in an industrial district on the city's edge. An explosion at a chemical processing plant had caused a massive fire that was rapidly spreading through multiple connected buildings. The journey to the site took 17 minutes, during which Captain Cordero received constant updates on the evolving situation. The fire had intensified significantly, and there were unconfirmed reports of night shift workers still trapped inside the complex. Other units were already on site attempting to contain the fire, but the complexity of the facility and the nature of the stored materials made every decision potentially fatal. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic in a way that only truly serious flames were visible through broken windows in 3 separate buildings. Thick, black smoke rose in columns that blocked the city lights in the background, and there was a constant sound of small explosions as pressurized containers succumbed to the heat. Commanders from other units were trying to coordinate efforts, but the situation was evolving faster than established protocols could keep up with. Captain Cordero quickly assembled his team, assessing the situation while receiving fragmented information from other responders. There was confirmation now that at least 4 workers were inside the complex, possibly more. Their exact location was unknown, but they were believed to be in an administrative area on the 2nd floor of the main building, temporarily protected from the main fire-by-fire doors that wouldn't hold indefinitely. Sarah watched the structure as Cordero spoke, her eyes tracing the fire's progression, identifying weak structural points, calculating possible entry and exit routes. It was an automatic process, the result of years of doing exactly this type of assessment in conditions often worse than this one. She noticed something that others had missed in the rush and confusion of the moment. There was an access route through the adjacent building that was not yet compromised by the fire. The structures were connected by a covered walkway on the 2nd floor, originally designed to allow personnel movement between facilities without exposure to the element. If that walkway were still intact and accessible, it would provide a relatively safe path to the area where the victims were possibly trapped. Sarah shared her observation with Cordero, pointing to the walkway and quickly explaining her rationale. Other commanders expressed doubts about the route's feasibility, arguing that the walkway might be structurally compromised or already blocked by smoke and heat. Cordero listened to all the arguments, then made a decision that would define subsequent events. He authorized a rescue attempt via the route suggested by Sarah, assigning her to lead a small team while other units continued fighting the main fire and establishing a security perimeter. Sarah chose Michael and Lisa to accompany her, recognizing that she would need their specialized skills if they encountered critically ill victims. Cordero ordered a strict 15-minute time limit for entry and exit, regardless of the outcome. The team quickly equipped themselves with breathing apparatus, breaching tools, and basic medical equipment that Lisa always insisted on carrying. Entry into the adjacent building was relatively straightforward, although smoke was already beginning to seep in through cracks and connected ventilation systems. Visibility was limited but manageable, and the heat, while intense, was still within tolerable limits. They reached the covered walkway after 5 minutes of careful navigation through industrial corridors filled with machinery and stored material. The structure appeared intact, but Sarah could feel subtle vibrations indicating structural stress from the fire in the connected building. She carefully tested the first sections before committing the weight of an entire team, instructing Michael and Lisa to maintain a safe distance between them to distribute the load. Crossing the footbridge was a tense experience, the metal beneath her heating up rapidly, and through the side windows they could see the inferno-consuming sections of the main building. Dense smoke obscured much of the view, but flashes of flame were visible through the black haze, constant reminders of the urgency of the situation. Sarah maintained a steady pace, neither too fast to risk error, nor too slow to waste precious seconds. They reached the main building with 8 minutes already elapsed of their 15-minute. The administrative area where they believed the victims were located was accessible via a corridor that showed alarming signs of heat exposure. Paint on the walls was beginning to blister, and the air was stiflingly hot even through protective gear. Sarah knew they had minutes, perhaps only 1 or 2, before that entire section became uninhabitable. They found the first victim almost immediately. A middle-aged man was semi-conscious on the floor near a closed door, having apparently collapsed while trying to escape. Lisa began immediate medical assessment while Sarah and Michael moved to check beyond the door. The space revealed was a control room with electronic equipment and 3 additional people, all conscious but visibly affected by smoke inhalation. The extraction needed to be quick but controlled. Sarah coordinated movements with practiced efficiency, assigning specific responsibilities to each team member. Michael would be responsible for 2 ambulatory victims who could move with assistance. Lisa would take care of the semi-conscious man who needed to be. Sarah would take on the 3rd victim, a younger woman who was conscious but disoriented and showing signs of possible carbon monoxide poisoning. The return journey was significantly more difficult than the approach. The added weight of the victims, combined with rapidly deteriorating condition, turned every step into a deliberate challenge. The heat on the walkway had intensified dramatically, and Sarah could feel through her boots that the metal was nearing temperatures that would compromise its structural integrity. She quickened her pace as much as possible without risking a fall or accident. They were halfway across the walkway when they heard a sound every firefighter. It was a deep, metallic groan, and indication that supporting structures were beginning to fail under the combination of extreme heat and added weight. Sarah made an instant decision, ordering Michael to speed off with his 2 victims, while she and Lisa would follow immediately behind. There was no time for discussion or hesitation. Michael reached the adjacent building with seconds to spare. Sarah and Lisa were just a few feet from the exit when they felt the walkway begin to give way beneath their feet. Lisa was slightly ahead, carrying the semi-conscious man, and Sarah pushed her with a final push that ensured they both crossed the threshold to safety. The momentum left Sarah momentarily unbalanced at the exact moment that section of the walkway finally collapsed. She fell approximately 3 meters before managing to grab onto an exposed support beam. The victim she was carrying slipped from her shoulder, but was caught by Michael, who had left his victims in a safe place and returned to help. Sarah hung there for a moment that it seemed much longer than it actually was, assessing options while smoke and heat increased around her. Cordero was shouting through the radio, demanding a status update. Michael extended a rescue tool, a telescopic pole with a hook, which Sarah managed to reach with considerable effort. The climb back up was a matter of sheer strength and determination, every inch gained against exhaustion and heavy equipment that seemed to be conspiring to pull her back down. When she finally rolled into safety, her muscles trembled with fatigue and adrenaline. All 5 victims were successfully evacuated from the complex and handed over to medical teams waiting outside the perimeter. 3 were in stable condition. 2 would require hospitalization for treatment of smoke inhalation and possible carbon monoxide poisoning, but all would survive. The entire operation had taken 19 minutes, 4 over the established limit, but Cordero did not mention the violation of that deadline. In the following days, while investigators determined the cause of the initial explosion and assessed damage to the industrial complex, the story of the rescue circulated throughout the department. Sarah received formal recognition for her actions. To identify a viable access route and lead a successful operation under extremely dangerous conditions. More importantly for her, she earned the unwavering respect of her team at Station 47.